I come from a family in which we don't speak French, but when we went to the elementary school, we had to learn French. So during the first year, to be honest with you, we just remained quiet. We learned how to recite the alphabet, and bit by bit we learned some French word because it was forbidden to speak a mother language.
The French ideal of cultural assimilation proved grossly misjudged. The colonies were founded by French military men to the exclusion of existing leaders. Their heavy-handed rule often created grievances among African subjects. But remote communities in places like Chad were able to evade the daily influence of French rule altogether. Only in...
You can see how Africa was carved up at the Berlin Conference in 1885. They just decided they were taking what they wanted. They didn't care how they got it, but they just took it. And not only did they take it, but they mixed the people them up. And so when we find Africa in the problems that it is today, when we find the Caribbean in the problems that it is today, can you ask yourself, why? Can you understand why we're in it? Because there's been, as Burning Spear said, a whole heap of mix up, and a whole heap of blend up. And that's why when we look at some of the things that you see, you just said the scramble for Africa, which was 1885. Today in 2014, the scramble for Africa is on again. And so when it's on, our question is what is our role as African people, African Caribbean people? What is our role in understanding our history and understanding what's going on? Because what makes a people rich is when they control the land. If you can take a people away from their land and make them landless, then you can control the people. And if you don't have that land, and someone else takes it and then uses it productively to make something for their own benefit, as you can see, just like in Jamaica, you will find bauxite. They get dug out the ground, they got to send it to America, and then America charges them for it. And if you go to Jamaica, you'll see more so now, we're importing more foreign things than we're manufacturing and developing our own things. And I'm just saying that as a child born here in England, coming to understand and getting to know and researching my history, it's making me having to reevaluate who I am. So during this scramble, for me, this man was born at a particular period of time, and for me was one of the greatest revolutionaries that came along at any time. So much songs for me, I've grown up knowing, and the one thing I do is I give thanks for Rastafari, because had it not been for Rastafari as a little youth man growing up in London here, I wouldn't know some of the things that I knew. Had Rasta not said some of the things that they said. And I learned a lot about this man because of the music that Rasta was singing and what Rasta was saying. And for me, one of the greatest men in history that we should honor and remember him. But one of the things that I love about this man so much more is that is what he said then relevant today? Is what Marcus Garvey spoke about at that time, in the 40s, in the 30s, when he was speaking and doing the things that he was doing, is that work still valid for today? And so for me, as I'm kind of winding down from this presentation, is for us to hear what Marcus has got to say, because I just think Marcus Garvey, for me, just a fantastic man. And that's why I I celebrate our ancestors, our parents, who have come through this struggle and have had to really suck up a lot of foolishness that they had to take when they first came to this country. And so for me, it's an honour for them and all those that may have fought in the First and Second World War. I think for me, it's about looking back and thinking, what have we really gained as black people out of being involved in all these theatres of war? And what does Garvey have to say about some of this? So for me, I'm going to play a little bit of Garvey.
May I say something to you to give you a true knowledge of yourself and life, so that the same glory and success attained by other men who understand themselves may be yours? Man in the full knowledge of himself is a superb and supreme creature of creation. When man becomes possessor of the knowledge of himself, he becomes master of his environment, the captain of his own ship, the director of his own destiny, the accomplisher of his own ends. Man should understand himself because man is full of knowledge, and this knowledge is a gift of nature. When Mother Nature created man, she deprived him of nothing. He was given the faculty of understanding all things around him. This faculty for understanding has not been taken away from him. None of his senses have been taken away from him. So there is no excuse for the black man in lacking the knowledge that man is used to beautify the world and produce all that he needs for his happiness and civilization. Look the world over, and whatever you see in it that is pleasing to man, contributing to man's comfort, to his needs and to his satisfaction, it is but the work of man. Man blessed with the knowledge of himself and the understanding of all things around him. If you are able to live with the knowledge of yourself and with the greater knowledge of nature, you must know what is good and what is not. You must know what is finite. You must know that which is material, physical, and otherwise is at your disposal to create or otherwise use. If we leave America and go over to the east of Japan, they will be telling their fellow citizens of Japan of the wonderful accomplishments of the Japanese people, proving that man is moving onward as time moves on. But you have hated yourselves as you've done in previous years. You have shown malice, prejudice, and hate to each other. And the result is that while other races have made progress, while India has made progress towards nationalism, while Ireland has made progress towards republicanism, while the whole world has made progress in man's accomplishments, you still stand fighting yourselves, dishonoring yourselves, showing no disposition toward that higher life, so that you will be abundantly blessed. So reflect and think that you were created for some purpose other than exhibiting malice toward your neighbor or fellow men of your own race. What a pity it is that we cannot stand united without a written law. There is no written law compelling other races to stand together. They are brought together by the gentle touch of nature. The unwritten law of nature causes them to stand together on all occasions. So wheresoever you find them in the field, that one gentle touch of nature causes them to stand together, if need be, die together. But with the black man, you can preach to him from the pulpit. You lecture from the platform, from the byways and the hedges. The spirit of cooperation, but he will not cooperate. You talk to him gently, you try talking harshly to him, he still will not cooperate. The result is that he falls prey to those who understand themselves and walk through the world making you their serfs and slaves. You must acquire an understanding of yourself. Look around you. See the smiling pictures of nature, the beautiful hedges, the wonderful mountains, the wonderful vegetation all around. But because of your disposition to each other, you live in suffering, in want, in penury, and in debt. You lack the gentle touch of nature, love for each other, you hate yourselves. Black men, and what is wrong with you? Why have you no affection for yourselves? Could I hope to see you living among yourselves as the people I've spoken of? Living in charity, love, and in sympathy with each other? It can be done. I wonder if you will adapt that course. Isn't it easier to enjoy prosperity than to live in ignorance and darkness? Why select the works of the nature? Nature never gave pain, suffering, and death to the world. It was man himself who selected death, pain, and sorrow. I wonder if I cannot inspire you to select between good and evil. Let me impress upon you once again that whatsoever your hardships may be, whatsoever your difficulties in life, they are your own selection. And so if you encourage them, if you husband them and take them to your bosom, they will abide with you. Nature will not take them away from you as Mother Nature did not give them to you. She is not responsible for your sorrows. Mother Nature represents all that is beautiful. She gave you the highest personality in the realm divine. Your sorrows are your own. If you want joy, if you want sunshine, it is before you abundantly in nature. I made a selection of sunshine, the beautiful sunshine. I made a selection to laugh with the moon, to laugh with the stars, and sing with the birds of the forest and of the wilderness, to join in the rhythmic music of the winds that sing from east to west and from north to south. Had I selected sorrow, I would have been dead a long time ago, and been without that which would send me into the presence of the divine, because I would have lived not with the knowledge that is divine. We must acquire the higher knowledge of life. Black men and black women, will you get the knowledge that the white man has that causes him to be leaders and masters in the world? They are not gods with a peculiar source for understanding the world around them. They have only given expression to the knowledge of their humanity and been able to use and conquer all to their satisfaction and glory. And that is why they are always greater than you in every community that you find them. Isn't it strange that wheresoever the white man is found, he takes precedence over you? Why is that so? Answer that for yourselves, black men and black women. Wheresoever you come in contact with the white man, you always have to go down in defeat before him. Whether it's in England, in France, or in America, you always have to go down to the white man, and yet he has 2 eyes, 2 feet, 2 hands, same passions, same senses and feelings as you have. Your feet are not put on opposite sides, now your hands turned around the other way. But it's because you fail to use your will, your knowledge, and your mental faculties to the point where you will enjoy life around you. I'm only here and not in the gutters and in the pond of despair because I use my intelligence. And I swear that no man alive shall ever use his intelligence in understanding the works of nature more than I. I shall rise as high as he ascends. I shall meet him on the same platform of mental equality and fight him till thy kingdom come, because nature created us equal. I want you to make up your mind as I made up my mind years ago. Make up your mind that you will rise to the knowledge of your soul. Because of your ignorance, you cannot understand and decide between good and evil. You don't know whether you're doing right or wrong. With a greater knowledge of life, you're able to appreciate all things around you. I'm able to gather you here because I understand you. Understand your neighbor, your wife, your children, and you will be able to live in harmony with each other and get the best out of life.
I've come to the end of my presentation, but I hope that we can find it in ourselves to lift up our spirit and continue to walk the road and hold up our head high as African people. I hope that the presentation does give us the opportunity to celebrate our ancestors, our mothers and our fathers and our ancestors. Because it's important for me that we set the example for the younger generation of young people that are coming along. Because the world as it is now is changing rapidly and fast. And because it's changing rapidly and fast, we need to pick up the baton again and say to ourselves, as Marcus Garvey said, "Up you mighty people, you can accomplish what you will." And that is my last statement for today. That up you mighty people, you can accomplish what you will. And I'm hoping that next week I will come and then present and bring us up into the 1950s and 60s and what was going on in England at that time. So my intention is to be back here next week and bring it right up to date so that we can see where we are in the 21st century and what we may need to do to help ourselves to move on. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope there was something in it that you could take away and think about for yourself, as I will. And I hope that next week we can be back here again and talk some more about the celebration of us as an African people and what we can do. So thank you very much for having me, and I hope that we see you again.
study about the World War I and II. I've managed to write 5 poems, and I'm going to read 2 for you tonight. The first one is called War of the World. First World War was global, from 1914 to 1916. Many died of malnutrition. It was not a pretty scene. The remaining ones showed courage, endurance, tenacity. They need to be remembered, you see. Men from Ghana, Nigeria, was drafted in to fight. The battle raged both day and night. The whole world was at loggerhead, leaving many maimed or dead. What price must we pay for victory? We know of a dancer called Matahari, but does the world remember many of our valiant men? Are their names spoken of again and again? The second poem is from a father's point of view as he watched his son going off to war. And it's called, I Saw Him One Last Time. I saw him one last time. Then he had to go. War took my son, and I miss him so. Always told him to stand up and be a man. Had big dreams for him. Had a plan. A father wants his son to be tough and strong. But going off to fight seems quite wrong. His mother blames me for being too tough with Willie. Didn't want him to grow up weak and silly. Bought him toy soldiers when he was small. Always encouraged him to be a black man that walked tall. Regrets. Not showing him the love that I should. Oh, how I would do things differently if I could. Fighting for his country took away my son's life. I see misery on the face of my wife. Her accusing stares make me feel I committed a crime. But my heart bleeds too. I saw him only one last time. Thank you so much.
So we're having a little short break now, and then afterwards we're going to show a film, if you're willing to say. It's called The Miracle of St. Anna's. So it's about black people in the war in Africa, and it's actually a film made by Spike Lee. So it will happen in the next couple of minutes, okay? Go on. All right.
Caribbean African presence in Britain. Last week, we discussed World War I and World War II and what was the experience. And so this week, I wanted to cover the 40s, 50s, 60s and 70s, and to kind of touch on what was our experiences growing up here in England during those times. Myself personally, I'm a 60s baby, so I'm coming from all of that Windrush time coming up to now. So I'm of that time and of that era where our people had come here in 1948 in the 50s, and that then gave rise to the young man like myself being born. But I know that many of you who have lived here yourselves, you have a history of your own family and what your journey was like in your own time. So I'm really just telling the story from my perspective on what I understand about history. And I've been doing this stuff in and around the community for many years. But today, I want to cover this particular period, the 1940s, 50s and 60s. So I hope that you're going to enjoy this evening, and I'm going to try and hope that you can see your own self in the whole experience of us being here as African Caribbean people. So thank you once again for coming and for being here, and hopefully you'll enjoy what we're going to be looking at as our story of Britain. The first thing that I wanted to say before I start, I want to give thanks to our parents. That's one of the things that I want to do. I want to give thanks to our parents because our parents really did bear the brunt of a lot of things that took place in this country. And a lot of times we don't hear a lot of things about our parents. And they were the pioneers who set the pace for me to able to be born and to be here. 1, 2. I'm really not too much of a great lover of the microphone thing. Okay. So yes, I wanted to look at our parents this evening because every other nation celebrates its own people. And I think that we need to celebrate and acknowledge our people, and especially those pioneers that came in and what they had to live through and what they went through while they were here. And you're going to hear some of that in here. So for me this evening, I want to give thanks to my mom, my dad, my ancestors, and I want to take it all the way back to our people. And thank you for giving us such a wonderful experience. But there's questions that we still need to ask out of the black experience living in England. But I'm going to ask that a little bit later. But as I said up there, black people have been living in England long before the Windrush. If you go back to the 12th century, you will find us here. If you go back to the days of the Romans, you will find us here. If you go back to the days of the Moors, you will find us here. So, the black man didn't just come to England in 1948. That's a nonsense and a lie. And they won't teach this in school because to teach it in school is to empower the young people to get an understanding of who they are. But my job is to make sure that I give them an understanding of who they are, regardless to what. So, I just want to show you a movie that came out a little while ago, and sometimes when we watch things on TV, we like films. Film. I want to watch the film. But sometimes when we watch films, we watch it as entertainment. But we don't watch it for what's being said. And the message just in it. So it goes right over our head, and by the time the movie finishes, we say, why the man is good, him get wet, and him save the day. But when we're always watching them, What about us in the story? So have a quick look at this and you'll get what I'm saying. This is Kevin Costner playing a part with Morgan Freeman in Robin Hood. And all of us know about Robin Hood.
The mistress of the house that Robin of Locksley is at the door.
Her ladyship not here.
Is the child married?
Maybe she is, maybe she isn't.
Hospitality in this country is as warm as the weather.
And this is the time of the 12th century we're talking about.
Leave your weapons. Just you. Wait here.
Right here.
Now, this
Curse on Moors and Saracens.
is
Not
what
their
you do.
ungodly ways. Master Robin would never have left. What manner of name is Hazim? Irish? Cornish?
Moorish.
Moorish. These are some of the people who inhabited England at that time. And they brought civilization to much of what you call Europe and Spain. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at African people who have been in England from a long, long time ago. And now, I want to bring us back to the 40s because I just thought to myself, I just wanted to show you that black people have been living in England and have been here for a long, long time. And if I really go into the history of black England, you will really start to see that we was here even before the European was here. And that we were kings and rulers of this very country at one point in time. But we won't go there, we're going to stick with 1944. So here we are, Africans in Britain in 1944.
Have seen many new faces, people from all parts of the British Commonwealth and Empire and from the Allied nations. When they are in the forces, we have learned to spot some of them. We know an Australian by his wide-brimmed hat, an Indian by his turban, a French sailor by his pom-pom and striped shirt. But when they are just dressed like anybody else, it is not so easy. What about these people, for example, who are making their way to Broadcasting House in London? Do you know what part of the world they come from? Are they from West Africa or the Union? From the Americas, or from some outlying island in the Pacific? Every one of these people gathered together in this studio is a West Indian. Everyone who has come across 4,000 miles of ocean from that great bay in the Atlantic which lies between North and South America, the Caribbean Sea. They have come from the long chain of islands which stretches from the Bahamas in the north right round to Trinidad. They call themselves West Indians, but they are of a dozen different races, descendants of the British and French and Spanish adventurers who opened up the New World, of the African slaves who were brought across to work on the sugar plantations, of Chinese shopkeepers, of Hindus and Muslims from India. Today, West Indians have common citizenship and common cause with us, and they have come over to help us. Each week, some of them broadcast messages home to their families in the West Indies, but this evening they are broadcasting to Britain.
We're all ready for you, Miss Larson.
Thank you, Tommy.
famous cricketer. Larry used to be just a summer visitor, but when war began, he became a welfare officer to the Ministry of Labour.
Hello everybody, this is Larry Constantine. I'd like to say a few words about the many hundreds of West Indians who have come over here to help on the factory front. Here in a training centre in the north of England are 82 of them. People from all walks of life, including doctors, lawyers, reporters from the West Indies. They're being taught side by side with Englishmen and women to operate all the latest types of machinery. In 16 weeks, they must know how to read blueprints, micrometers, slide rules, to set up and operate lathes, capstans, drills, and grinders. When their training is complete, they will go to aircraft or ordnance factories or machine shops. There are also others from several West Indian islands who volunteered and were chosen for their skill, and on arrival were immediately introduced into production in the united effort to beat Hitler's gang.
War is in the air, all the Indians will do their share. That is why they came, and not seeking glory or fame, they will fight. Fight for victory, let us really care, they will fight. Fight and never fear, victory is near. March, march, march to victory, march, march, march to victory. Fight, land, sea and in the air, on to victory.
These men are gaining knowledge not only in the wide field of engineering, but in the workings of the British trade union system. Also, they are getting together with English workers in the factories. And this will mean a lot during Reconstruction after the war, when plans for a new era of life in the West Indies must be put into effect.
What that always kind of makes me wonder is some of this stuff, they never really show it to our children in school. And just to show you that our parents that came here and were skilled people. They didn't come here as people that didn't know what to do. They were skilled people. But it's not something that is talked about. And as we were coming, you're going to see the kind of treatment that happened with us while we were here. But this is us coming in 1948.
Britain 500 remain. Many Allied servicemen will know it. They served their country well. In Jamaica they couldn't find work. Discouraged but full of hope, they sailed to Britain. The Colonial Office gives them a more cordial reception than was their first visit.
Now ask you all then, Lord Kitchener, I'm told that you are really the king of calypso singers, is that right? Will you sing for us? Right now. Yes. London is the place for me. London, this lovely city. You can go to France or America, India, Asia, or Australia, but you must come back to London city. Well, believe me, I am speaking broad-mindedly. I am glad to know my mother country. I've been traveling to countries years ago, but this is the place I wanted to go now. This is the place.
I tell you, some of you might know about Lord Kitchener more than me, but London is the place for me. I wonder if he was there, if he would sing the same song now. Is London as what it was? Our arrival is quite interesting.
Thursday, BBC 4 brings you Windrush.
So have a listen to this.
without these faces would today be hard to imagine.
Good evening. A father explained in harrowing detail today.
Most of the British public love Trevor Noel. Trevor, isn't thought of as a black newsreader anymore. Trevor's just the newsreader. And I think that says something about the way we've moved on in this country.
The Britain of 50 years ago was a very different place. In 1948, the nation was still counting the cost of victory in World War II. It was a country about to lose an empire, and it was a country that was almost exclusively white. But Britain was about to face the biggest wave of non-white immigration in its history, a wave that would bring 500,000 people from the West Indies.
We live in islands where there is lovely sunshine and sea and sand and all the rest of it, none of which you can eat.
This is their story, the hopes they brought, the reality they found.
You will see Sam put up rooms for rent, no niggers, neither blood.
You felt that you were an intruder, and truly, you were a foreigner. You did not belong.
This, too, is the story of Britain and how it was changed.
When we come over here, we brought music, we brought color, we brought dope, we brought life to this goddamn country.
It is the story of those who resisted change.
It does feel, especially in everyday life, as the English population thought, my God, we have a black population that is going to stay.
Immigration! And it's the story of those who fought for change.
It's like a powder cake. You can suppress people for so long, but one day it just dies.
By the end of the story, Britain has been transformed, not least by those early immigrants and by their children.
The nature of English identity now cannot be right. The black population has become a British population.
How do I feel now if I'm black or British? I think I'm a bit of both really. I'm black and I'm definitely British, That's what I am.
Our story begins exactly 50 years ago with the historic voyage of 500 West Indians on the Empire Windrush. June 21st, 1948. Although the Windrush had come 5,000 miles to Britain, to most on board it seemed like a homecoming. Back in the colonial Caribbean they had left, everyone was steeped in a way of life that was entirely British.
Britain was everything. In my school, which was a Church of England school, I'm not talking about college, I'm talking about school, we sang things like the Eton Boat Song. And it was strange. But everything that they did in England, we more or less did in our school. It was a kind of anglicized Jamaican upbringing.
We were brought up that we are British, and we were brought up that England is your mother country, and we were brought up to respect the royal family. So no way any of us would ever dare to go and speak anything against the royal family.
The king was our king. The flag was our flag. How more British could we get? And we lived it.
1939, it seemed entirely natural that 10,000 West Indians would volunteer for the war effort. This squadron, Jamaica Squadron, was named after the island that paid for the planes. But it was in manpower rather than money that the Caribbean made its biggest contribution.
I was still in college at the time, and I remember these white men came from England, and they took these, what we call trucks, open trucks, and they went to all the country parts, the little nooks and crannies, and they begged people to come and fight for your motherland, come and fight for England, because we need you.
When the appeal was made, I remember going to the then Labour office in Kingston, and there were literally thousands of fellows there, eager to contribute, to do something in the war effort. And I joined the very first wave.
They're just young lads in the primeval youth who the bell rings and we answer the bell for help towards the war effort, and we volunteered. We weren't forced or pushed or coerced. Everybody was doing it as young lads in those days.
I went to England in 1940 to join the Royal Air Force. Why? Well, you know, Jamaica was a colony then, and I suppose all loyal colonials, young men anyway, would feel you had a duty. Plus, I had a copy of Mein Kampf. I was browsing through it. I came across a passage where Hitler described black people and Jews as semi-developed, anthropoidal, that sort of thing. Very derogatory terms. And as a young man, I said, to hell with you. If that's the way you think, I'm going to fight this war. I'm going to join the Air Force, and I'm going to shoot your tail off and come back home.
You see, the interesting thing for me is that the experience that they have to have when they were coming and what they had to go through. So, when you consider during that wartime, Ethiopia was also under attack from Mussolini, as Germany and Mussolini had their hands in each other's pocket. And they don't tell you, but there were many people from Africa in America that wanted to leave to go and fight in the war with Mussolini attacking Ethiopia. They wanted to fight against it. But these are a lot of the things that they won't tell you in school, or they don't put on TV every day for you to see. But the information is there. So, I moved to the part where we now have a particular individual. As I was growing up, his name was Enoch Powell. But listen to the things that he went to do.
As the Windrush migrants began to establish themselves, the then Conservative government began to see a solution to its most acute problem, the shortage of labour in the public services, such as transport. The recruitment drive even took officials to the Caribbean. The campaign had an unlikely champion, a rising Conservative MP named Enoch Powell.
I mean, we wanted the immigrants. Enoch Powell of all people was Minister of Health, and he needed nurses, and he went to the Caribbean for them. Black nurses came.
Powell toured several Caribbean territories, including British Guyana.
I was church secretary. So when Mr. Powell was coming to Guyana, of course, I was one of the people that was called to be briefed, went with the minister to be briefed. And he was at Government House. And he told us all about the colleges and how you can study, and the nurses have an opportunity to train and become staff nurse and nurses. He's outlined the jobs and so on.
This campaign triggered a second wave of immigration far larger than the first. During the 1950s, nearly 250,000 West Indians arrived in England.
My parents went to Dudley in the West Midlands in the mid.
And as you know, I stopped it there because many of our parents went in all different parts of England when they came in, especially when they arrived from Tilbury Docks. Many of them went to different places. But when our parents were here too, it's the things that they had to endure, because there's a lot of things that our parents never tell us about, what they had to put up with every day when they was here. And it was hard survival. Because imagine when your people come here, they can turn around and say, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And yet you were invited to come and help to rebuild the country. And so sometimes for me, as an African man, we need to really stop, especially in the modern time, and sit down and evaluate what has been the benefit out of all of these things that have happened. So it was survival for our parents. And many of you will remember that we used to do the thing called pardon.
The only way to escape the clutches of the slum landlords was to buy your own home. But the sight of black homeowners in Britain provoked yet more resentment.
So partner used to go to buy our own homes.
How would you like it if the house next door to you was taken by a coloured person and became filled to bursting point with all his relations and his friends and so on and so forth?
If you buy in an area, sometimes you could be there. People won't speak to you, you know. And it was openly said, like white people would openly say, I don't know where they get the money from to buy houses, you know, how they come here. We've been here all this while and we can't buy a house, and they've come and started buying houses.
The growing number of black homeowners fueled speculation that West Indians were raising the money for houses from prostitution and racketeering. In fact, they had brought a far less exotic method with them from the Caribbean.
I think sometimes, haven't you heard that kind of saying before? That they brought something with them, they came with some kind of little evil intention as kind of self, they were doing all these negative things. And what was that about? Much more just to discredit what our parents were going through. But remember, as I said, one of the things that helped us through was that our parents had a thing called partner. And partner was what really helped to get us through a lot of what we had to go through. So,
the only way to escape the clutches of the slum landlords was to buy your own home. But the sight of black homeowners in Britain provoked yet more resentment.
I'm an estate agent.
Bear with me one moment. So what we're talking about is that at that time, our parents had to think about how do they keep the roof over their head. I know many of our parents went through a hard time being here. And I know for me personally, my dad used to work down in Bermondsey in a place called Peak Free Biscuit Factory. Peak Free. And when he used to work, may I tell you, when he used to work at Peak Free, he used to come home with a little pan of chocolate biscuit. Every time the chocolate biscuit ain't like what it is now, you can eat nice. It was a special time and wafer biscuit, you remember?
Yes, one, the pink one there.
These are the things that our parents, biscuit was a luxury, especially chocolate biscuit. So, some of us were on the railroad, some of us were on Peak Free Biscuit Factory, some of us were doing different things. But the one thing is, our parents took a lot of abuse from the people at work, but they never told us as we were growing up, because they didn't want us to know about some of the things that they were going through. And one of the things that they had to put up with when they were going through was what they called teddy boys. And teddy boys were people that used to attack our parents for no reason other than they never liked them. But let's listen to what used to go on with these teddy boys and see what it is that we do.
A decade after the Empire Windrush had brought 500 West Indians to Britain, tens of thousands followed. The expected a warm embrace from the mother country. Instead, he found a cold shoulder. Those who had fought beside them in the war now treated them like foreigners who threatened their jobs and their homes. The Notting Hill riots shook Britain, and they would open a new era of intolerance. This is the story of the journey from the streets of Notting Hill to the rivers of blood.
15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white.
And it is also the story of change, from post-war austerity to the birth of a new, vibrant edge to British culture.
When we come over here, we brought music, we brought colour, we brought dope, we brought life to this goddamn country.
And it's true. When our parents came here, a lot of our parents, when they wanted to go to church, when they used to go to the white churches, they weren't accepted. And so many of our parents started to have little meetings in their own houses to say that they could congregate together and have their little church with their one another. And it's out of that, having to work together through survival, that they were able to purchase churches and start doing little things that would eventually help to take us to where we were. But the tolerance level or the intolerance level that used to happen with our parents was serious things. So I just wanted to listen to some of the stuff that they had to endeavour with.
That night's riot would be just the opening salvo.
We're not talking about riots taking place. Those of you that think the riots that happened the other day is new, it's not new.
Something new and ugly raises its head in Britain. Racial violence. An angry crowd of youths chases a Negro into a greengrocer's shop, while police reinforcements are called out to check the riot. One of many that will break out here in a few days. The injured victim, a Jamaican, is taken to safety.
For the following 6 weeks, black homes were targeted by mobs, night after night. An eyewitness to the riots was newspaper columnist Mervyn Jones.
One went round in the early evening, soon after it got dark, and then you would see a bunch of youngsters, I estimated age 16 to 20, a bunch of youngsters running through the streets with petrol bottles, usually a beer bottle or something filled with petrol and with a piece of felt sticking out of it. And when they got to where they knew black people were living, they would smash the window and they would chuck it through the window and start a fire.
Mob violence on this scale was unheard of in the Britain of the time.
I was shocked.
This is what was going on.
We had a rather smug attitude, you know, that Britain is an orderly, peaceful society, and these things don't happen here. So I was taken by surprise. I think most people were taken by surprise.
Within days, it was clear that the violence in Notting Hill was not just the spontaneous action of local whites. Young men, many of them teddy boys, were pouring in from other areas to join in the attacks.
These are some of the things that our parents...
But an even more sinister force was at work. Sir Oswald Mosley's anti-immigrant union movement had been campaigning in Notting Hill since 1956. Mosley had become notorious in the 1930s as the leader of Britain's fascists.
And I heard about this
Discredited during the war for his support of Hitler, he saw Notting Hill as the chance to relaunch his political career.
Mosley jumped on the whole black dimension during and after the riots and said to ordinary English working class people, it's time to wake up. and don't let your country be taken over. I remember I saw Mosley once in a very charged atmosphere, and Mosley had the great political technique of hyping a crowd. Do you want your country to be taken over? Do you want the blacks to live next door to you? Do you want the blacks to take away your jobs? And he asked them pertinent, explosive questions, to which they said, no, no.
But not every white Briton agreed with Mosley.
I echoed him because I disagreed with him. I thought it was a lot of nonsense what he was saying. But the trouble was that if you opposed him, you a little while later you'd be followed up the road. You know, you'd be chased up the road by some of his supporters. So you had to be very careful.
By July of 1958, the resentment exploited by Mosley had turned the streets of Notting Hill into a dangerous place for West Indians.
You used to hear me like screaming. Dead boys used to whip them with a chain. Yeah, it was got chains. It's terrible. But you could never go out to help that person otherwise. And you would be putting your life in jeopardy.
The boys, the time they see blackbirds on the street every night. You can see I have a cut up here. It's a bicycle chain. Bicycle chain.
These are the things that our parents used to have to put up with.
All kind of implement. Police, when we went to the hospital, the police came. They told us the only way we can avoid these things happening to us is to go back where we come from.
The police themselves, we did not see them as upholders of law. They took sides, and they didn't take sides with us. We see them as a part of the enemy because that was their behavior. And so we had clashes even with the police themselves. And out of that riot, without any question, it was quite plain that there was nobody protecting us, so we had to protect ourselves.
By that time, the situation had become so bad that black men used to come from surrounding areas. They would come in solidarity to fight. Many black people felt if they're going to kill us, well, we're not going to be passive anymore, let's fight back.
The network of self-defense was orchestrated by former West Indian servicemen. They set up headquarters in the area, and groups of men were detailed to protect families and homes, street by street. Their campaign would culminate after 5 weeks of rioting in a head-to-head confrontation.
Our headquarters was at Blenheim Crescent, and they sent a message to us that they were coming for us. The Friday evening they were coming for us. They said it was from the Teddy boys, and they were coming for us. But of course we prepared ourselves.
Anything that could cut, we might. So we did arm ourselves, just like they did.
And we had everything. We had petrol bomb, we had everything ready for them. And they came the Friday. But they didn't stay long, because we hit them from downstairs and upstairs, and they ran.
That battle on the 1st of September was to be the last major incident of the summer. An uneasy peace returned to the streets of Notting Hill. But the shockwaves continued to reverberate elsewhere.